Your dream of owning a piece of the Lone Star State could turn into your biggest financial nightmare. While everyone is talking about Texas as the land of opportunity, there are cities across this massive state where buying a house right now is like throwing your money into a black hole. We are talking about places where home values are crashing, crime is skyrocketing, and your investment could lose 20% of its value before you even finish unpacking. The Texas housing market is going through a massive correction in 2025, with inventory jumping 53% above normal levels and prices dropping across the state. But some cities are getting hit harder than others. These are not just temporary dips, these are fundamental problems that could destroy your financial future. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which Texas cities to avoid at all costs, and more importantly, why these places could cost you everything. Here's the countdown of the 10 worst cities to buy a house in Texas in 2025. Trust me, you need to see what is happening in these places before you make the biggest purchase of your life. Number 10, Balch Springs, the Dallas suburb disaster. Starting our countdown at number 10 is Balch Springs, a Dallas suburb that looks appealing on paper but hides serious problems underneath. This city, 15 miles east of Dallas, has become a perfect storm of declining property values and dangerous living conditions that make it one of the worst places to invest your hard-earned money. Here's what makes Balch Springs so dangerous for homebuyers. Violent crimes here are 225% higher than the national average. Think about that for a second. If the average city has 10 violent crimes per year, Balch Springs has 32. This is not just a number on a spreadsheet. This is your family's safety we are talking about. But the crime statistics are just the beginning of the problem. Poverty and unemployment run rampant through this community. When people cannot find work and families are struggling to make ends meet, property values suffer. Who wants to buy a house in a neighborhood where break-ins are common and economic opportunities are disappearing? The real estate market in Balch Springs reflects these fundamental problems. Home values have been stagnant or declining while other Dallas suburbs continue to grow. Property taxes are still high because you are paying Dallas area rates, but you are not getting Dallas area appreciation or amenities. You end up paying premium prices for a substandard living experience. What makes this even worse is that many buyers get fooled by the proximity to Dallas. They think they are getting a bargain by buying in a nearby suburb, but they end up stuck with a property that nobody else wants to buy. When it comes time to sell, you will discover that location matters more than distance to a major city. If you are thinking about Balch Springs because the prices seem reasonable, ask yourself this question. Why are the prices low when it is so close to one of Texas's biggest job markets? The answer should terrify any potential homebuyer. Now, if you think Balch Springs has problems, wait until you hear about our next city where poverty and crime create an even more toxic environment for property values. Number 9, San Benito, the border town economic trap. San Benito sits near the Mexico border in the Rio Grande Valley, and while its location might seem appealing for those wanting affordable living, this city has become an economic trap that could destroy your real estate investment dreams. With 30% of households living in poverty, San Benito represents everything that can go wrong when you buy in the wrong location. The poverty statistics here are not just numbers, they represent a fundamental economic problem that affects every aspect of property ownership. When nearly 1 in 3 families cannot afford basic necessities, there is no demand for housing upgrades, no money for neighborhood improvements, and no economic growth to drive property appreciation. But poverty is just one piece of the puzzle. Crime rates in San Benito are more than double the state average, creating a community where safety concerns outweigh any potential savings on housing costs. Property crimes, violent crimes, and drug-related incidents make this area dangerous for families and toxic for property values. The school system in San Benito is severely under-resourced, which creates a double problem for homeowners. First, poor schools make it harder to attract quality buyers when you want to sell. Second, families with children will specifically avoid areas with struggling schools, shrinking your potential buyer pool dramatically. Here's what really makes San Benito dangerous for real estate investors. The below-average incomes and limited economic opportunities mean there is no catalyst for growth. Unlike other Texas cities that benefit from job creation and business development, San Benito lacks the economic foundation needed to support property appreciation. The cost of living might seem affordable, but that is because nobody wants to live there. Low prices are not a bargain when they reflect fundamental problems with safety, education, and economic opportunity. You might save money buying a house, but you will lose much more when you try to sell it. The border location comes with additional challenges, including political uncertainty and economic volatility, that can dramatically affect property values. Immigration policies, trade issues, and border security concerns create instability that smart real estate investors avoid. Speaking of economic disasters, our next city shows what happens when traditional industries collapse and leave entire communities behind. Number 8, Orange, the industrial decline catastrophe. Orange, Texas, located east of Houston near the Louisiana border, represents one of the most devastating examples of economic collapse affecting real estate values. This city built its identity around shipbuilding and fishing industries that once provided good jobs and stable communities. Today, those industries have largely disappeared, leaving behind a community where roughly 1/3 of residents live in poverty. When major industries leave a city, they take more than just jobs. They take the economic foundation that supports property values, local businesses, and community development. Orange has experienced this devastating cycle, and the effects are visible in every aspect of daily life. Crime, drugs, and gang activity have filled the vacuum left by legitimate economic opportunities. When people cannot find legal ways to make money, illegal activities become more attractive. This creates a dangerous environment that drives away anyone who has the means to leave, further accelerating the economic decline. Public infrastructure in Orange is crumbling in many neighborhoods, which creates a massive hidden cost for homeowners. When the city cannot afford to maintain roads, water systems, and other basic services, property owners end up paying more for maintenance and repairs. Your house might seem affordable, but the true cost of ownership becomes astronomical. The real estate market in Orange reflects these fundamental problems. Properties sit on the market for months without selling because buyers recognize the risks. Even when houses do sell, prices continue declining because there is no economic reason for values to recover. Here's what makes Orange particularly dangerous for real estate investment. Unlike cities with diversified economies that can recover from setbacks, Orange has not successfully transitioned to new industries. The shipbuilding and fishing decline happened years ago, but the community still has not found replacement economic drivers. Banks and lenders recognize these risks, which means getting financing in Orange can be more difficult and expensive. Insurance costs are often higher due to crime and infrastructure problems. Property taxes might seem low, but that is because property values have collapsed. The proximity to Houston might seem like an advantage, but the reality is that most people working in Houston choose to live in suburbs with better schools, lower crime, and stronger property appreciation. Orange gets none of the benefits of Houston's economy, but suffers from its own unique problems. If Orange shows us what happens when industries disappear, our next city demonstrates the devastating effects of unemployment and limited city services. Number 7, Snyder, the West Texas unemployment crisis. Snyder, located in West Texas north of the Permian Basin, has become one of the poorest places in the entire state, with unemployment rates triple the national average. This small city represents everything that can go wrong when economic opportunities disappear and local government cannot provide basic services. When unemployment hits triple the national average, it creates a domino effect that destroys property values. First, people cannot afford to buy houses, eliminating demand. Second, existing homeowners struggle to make mortgage payments, increasing foreclosures. Third, those who can leave often do, creating a shrinking population that further reduces demand for housing. City services in Snyder are extremely limited for a town of its size. Public transportation is practically non-existent, recreation opportunities are scarce, and basic infrastructure struggles to meet community needs. This means residents face higher transportation costs, fewer amenities, and ongoing concerns about city services. The lack of economic diversification makes Snyder vulnerable to boom and bust cycles. While the Permian Basin oil industry can provide some opportunities, those jobs are often temporary and subject to volatile oil prices. When oil prices drop, unemployment skyrockets and property values collapse. Violent crime has been rising in recent years, adding safety concerns to the economic problems. When communities struggle economically, crime often increases as people become desperate. This creates an environment where families do not want to live and investors do not want to risk their money. Here's what makes Snyder particularly dangerous for home buyers. The limited job market means that even if you find work, your employment options are severely restricted. If you lose your job, finding another one locally becomes nearly impossible, forcing you to choose between unemployment and abandoning your property investment. The real estate market reflects these challenges, with properties selling well below their peak values and taking much longer to sell than in healthier markets. Even worse, many properties become distressed sales as owners face foreclosure or simply walk away from underwater mortgages. Banks are reluctant to lend in areas with such high unemployment and limited economic prospects. This means fewer qualified buyers, longer selling times, and lower sale prices for anyone trying to exit the market. Now, if you think Snyder sounds bad, wait until you hear about our next city, which holds the unfortunate distinction of being the poorest city in the entire state of Texas. Number 6. Raymondville, the poorest city in Texas. Raymondville holds the devastating distinction of being the poorest city in the entire state of Texas by multiple metrics. Located 40 miles north of the Mexico border, this community represents the absolute bottom of the real estate investment landscape, where nearly half the population lives below the poverty line. When almost 50% of residents cannot afford basic necessities, the real estate market becomes fundamentally broken. There is no demand for housing upgrades, no money for property maintenance, and no economic foundation to support property appreciation. Houses become expenses rather than investments. The limited access to steady employment in Raymondville creates a community where economic mobility is nearly impossible. Without good jobs, people cannot build wealth, save for down payments, or qualify for mortgages. This eliminates the local buyer pool that normally supports property values. Healthcare access is severely limited, which affects both quality of life and property desirability. When people cannot get basic medical care locally, it creates additional stress and expense that makes the area less attractive to potential residents. This is particularly important for families with children or older adults. Critical services like reliable internet, quality schools, and public safety are underfunded or unavailable. In today's economy, these are not luxuries. They are necessities that determine whether people can work, learn, and live safely. Raymondville's inability to provide these services makes it fundamentally unsuitable for modern living. The poverty statistics in Raymondville are not just temporary setbacks. They represent decades of economic decline and lack of opportunity. This kind of entrenched poverty does not resolve quickly, meaning property values will likely remain depressed for years or decades. Property crimes and drug-related activities are common in areas with such high poverty rates. This creates safety concerns that drive away anyone who has options, further concentrating poverty and reducing property demand. Here's what makes Raymondville absolutely devastating for real estate investment. Even if you buy property at rock-bottom prices, there is no economic catalyst for recovery. No major employers are moving in, no infrastructure improvements are planned, and no government programs are successfully addressing the fundamental problems. The border location adds political and economic uncertainty that can dramatically affect property values based on changing immigration policies, trade relationships, and border security measures. These external factors make property values even more unpredictable. But if you think being the poorest city in Texas is bad, our next city combines poverty with some of the highest crime rates in America. Number 5. Robstown, the crime capital nightmare. Robstown has earned the terrifying distinction of having one of the highest crime rates in America compared to communities of all sizes. With 31 crimes per 1,000 residents, your chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime is 1 in 32. This is not just a neighborhood problem, this is a community-wide crisis that makes property ownership dangerous and financially devastating. Let me put those crime statistics in perspective for you. In most safe communities, your chance of being a crime victim might be 1 in 100 or 1 in 200. In Robstown, it is 1 in 32. This means that if you live there for several years, you are almost guaranteed to experience crime personally. More than 92% of Texas communities have lower crime rates than Robstown. Think about that. Out of hundreds of cities and towns across Texas, Robstown ranks in the worst 8% for safety. This is not a temporary problem or a statistical anomaly. This is a fundamental breakdown of public safety. Property crime in Robstown includes burglary, theft, and vandalism that directly affects homeowners. When crime is this common, insurance costs skyrocket, security becomes expensive, and property maintenance becomes a constant battle against damage and theft. The true cost of homeownership includes all these hidden expenses. Violent crime creates an environment where families cannot feel safe in their own neighborhoods. Parents worry about children playing outside, adults avoid walking after dark, and everyone lives with constant anxiety about personal safety. This kind of environment drives away anyone who has options. The high crime rates reflect deeper economic and social problems that affect property values. Drug trafficking, gang activity, and lack of economic opportunities create a cycle where crime becomes normalized and law enforcement becomes overwhelmed. Here's what makes Robstown absolutely toxic for real estate investment. High crime areas do not attract quality tenants if you are buying rental property. They do not attract families if you are planning to sell. And they do not attract businesses that could improve the local economy. Property values in high crime areas typically decline over time as the problems get worse rather than better. Even if you buy at what seems like a bargain price, you will likely lose money as the situation deteriorates and demand disappears. Financing can be difficult in high crime areas as lenders recognize the risks. Insurance costs are higher, and some insurance companies refuse to cover properties in areas with extreme crime problems. The crime statistics also mean that neighborhood improvement efforts are likely to fail. Even if some residents try to organize community improvements, the fundamental safety problems make long-term progress nearly impossible. Now, if you think Robstown's crime problems are shocking, wait until you see our next city where economic collapse has created an even more dangerous environment for property investors. Number 4. Freeport, the coastal poverty trap. Freeport occupies what should be an ideal coastal location on the Gulf of Mexico south of Houston, but high rates of poverty, crime, and weak city services have turned this potential paradise into one of the worst places to invest in Texas real estate. The contrast between its beautiful location and ugly reality makes it particularly dangerous for unsuspecting buyers. The crime rate in Freeport significantly surpasses the national average across all American communities, regardless of size. Your odds of falling victim to either violent or property crime stand at a concerning 1 in 37. This means that coastal living comes with constant security concerns that destroy any quality of life benefits. When comparing Freeport to other Texas cities, the crime statistics become even more alarming. Freeport's crime rate surpasses that of 88% of the state's cities and towns, placing it among the least secure locations in Texas. This is particularly shocking given its coastal location and proximity to Houston. The poverty rates in Freeport create a community where economic opportunity is limited and social problems are concentrated. High unemployment, limited education opportunities, and weak local economy mean that residents struggle to improve their circumstances, creating a cycle of decline that affects property values. City services in Freeport are inadequate for the community's needs, which creates hidden costs for property owners. When the local government cannot provide adequate police protection, road maintenance, or utility services, residents end up paying more for private security, property repairs, and basic services. Here's what makes Freeport particularly deceptive for real estate buyers. The coastal location and proximity to Houston make it seem like a bargain compared to other waterfront properties. Many buyers assume they are getting oceanfront living at a discount, but they are actually buying into a community with fundamental problems. The tourism potential of Freeport has never been realized due to safety concerns and lack of infrastructure investment. This means that unlike other coastal communities that benefit from vacation rental income and seasonal property appreciation, Freeport properties generate expenses without income opportunities. Property insurance costs in Freeport are higher due to both crime risks and hurricane exposure. This double whammy of insurance expenses can make property ownership significantly more expensive than buyers anticipate. The weak local economy means there are limited job opportunities for residents, which reduces the pool of potential buyers and renters for any property investment. Even if you find tenants, their ability to pay rent consistently is questionable given the local economic conditions. Speaking of economic disasters, our next city shows what happens when oil boom turns to bust and leaves homeowners holding worthless properties. Number 3, Pecos, the coming crash leader. Pecos, Texas, is projected to experience the most severe home price decline in the entire state, with Zillow forecasting a devastating 12.7% drop by March 2026. This West Texas city represents everything that can go wrong when you buy at the wrong time in the wrong place. Understanding why Pecos is facing such severe price declines helps explain why buying there now is financial suicide. The local economy is heavily dependent on oil industry activity, which creates extreme volatility in employment and income. When oil prices drop or drilling activity slows, unemployment skyrockets and property demand disappears overnight. The 12.7% projected decline is not just a temporary correction, it represents a fundamental overvaluation that the market is finally recognizing. Properties that seemed reasonably priced last year are now revealed to be dramatically overpriced compared to local economic conditions. Here's what makes the Pecos situation particularly dangerous for buyers. This projected decline assumes normal economic conditions. If there is a recession, oil industry downturn, or other economic shock, the actual decline could be much worse than 12.7%. Some experts believe total declines could reach 20 to 30%. The oil boom and bust cycle in West Texas has repeated many times over the decades, and each time, communities like Pecos see property values collapse when the boom ends. The current projections suggest we are entering another bust phase that could last several years. Population decline is another factor affecting Pecos property values. As economic opportunities disappear, people leave for cities with better job markets. This creates a shrinking population that reduces demand for housing and increases the supply of abandoned or distressed properties. Infrastructure in Pecos was built during boom times but becomes expensive to maintain during bust periods. This means higher taxes and fees for remaining residents, plus deteriorating city services that further reduce property attractiveness. The banking industry recognizes these risks, which means getting financing in Pecos is becoming more difficult and expensive. Lenders are reluctant to make long-term loans in areas where property values are expected to decline significantly. Here's the most terrifying part about the Pecos projection. 12.7% is just the beginning. Once property values start declining in oil-dependent communities, the decline often accelerates as more people try to sell and escape the market. If you think a 12.7% decline sounds bad, our next city is dealing with urban problems that make property investment even more dangerous. Number 2, Beaumont, the industrial zone disaster. Beaumont ranks as our number 2 worst city for real estate investment with 9.9 violent crimes and 49.7 property crimes per 1,000 residents. Located in the heart of Texas's industrial corridor, this city combines high crime rates with economic vulnerability that makes property ownership particularly dangerous. The refinery district in Beaumont accounts for 15.3 burglaries per 1,000 residents, which means industrial workers and nearby homeowners face constant property crime risks. Living near industrial facilities might seem like good employment opportunities, but the reality includes pollution, safety hazards, and higher crime rates. Domestic violence incidents in Beaumont have increased 8% annually, indicating deeper social problems that affect community stability. When domestic violence is rising, it reflects broader issues with economic stress, substance abuse, and social breakdown that make neighborhoods unsafe for families. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office reports that methamphetamine-related offenses run 35% above state averages, particularly in northern neighborhoods. Drug activity creates a cascade of related crimes, including theft, violence, and property damage that devastates local real estate values. Industrial zone vulnerabilities make Beaumont particularly risky for long-term property investment. Chemical plants, refineries, and other industrial facilities create environmental hazards, air quality problems, and potential catastrophic accidents that can instantly destroy property values. The combination of industrial pollution and high crime creates a community where quality of life is poor and property appreciation is unlikely. Families with options choose cleaner, safer communities, leaving Beaumont with residents who cannot afford to leave. Here's what makes Beaumont especially dangerous for real estate investors. The industrial economy provides some employment stability, but it also creates boom and bust cycles based on commodity prices and industrial demand. When the industrial sector struggles, unemployment rises quickly and property values collapse. Environmental concerns in Beaumont include air pollution, water contamination risks, and soil quality issues that can affect property values and insurance costs. Some areas may have environmental cleanup requirements that create massive unexpected expenses for property owners. The crime statistics in Beaumont indicate a community where basic law and order has broken down. Property crimes affect homeowners directly through theft and damage. Violent crimes create fear that drives away potential buyers and renters. Insurance costs in Beaumont reflect both crime risks and industrial hazards. Property insurance, flood insurance, and liability coverage can be significantly more expensive than in safer communities, increasing the true cost of property ownership. But as bad as Beaumont sounds, our number one worst city combines all these problems into a perfect storm that makes it the absolute worst place to buy a house in Texas. Number 1, Houston, the deceptive giant. Houston claims the number one spot as the worst city to buy a house in Texas in 2025. And this might shock you because Houston is often promoted as a real estate opportunity. But the numbers tell a devastating story that every potential buyer needs to understand before making the biggest financial mistake of their lives. Houston has Texas's highest combined crime rates with 12.4 violent crimes and 62.3 property crimes per 1,000 residents. The city's northeast sector experiences 42% of violent offenses, particularly gang-related assaults, which increased 7% last year. This is not just statistics, this is your family's safety we are talking about. Vehicle thefts in Houston hit 24.8 per 1,000 residents, with downtown areas being particularly dangerous. Imagine buying a house and having to worry every day about your car being stolen from your own driveway. This is the reality of Houston living that real estate promoters do not mention. Burglaries concentrate in southern suburbs, which means even areas that seem safe have significant property crime risks. Methamphetamine-related crimes jumped 15% in 2023, contributing to rising violent crime trends that show no signs of improving. But here's what makes Houston the absolute worst place to invest in Texas real estate. The city's size creates a false sense of economic stability, but the massive population also means massive problems. Urban gang activity drives much of the violent crime, with specific neighborhoods seeing robbery rates triple the state average. The Houston real estate market is experiencing significant corrections as the Texas housing boom comes to an end. Inventory is building up rapidly, sellers are cutting prices by thousands of dollars, and properties are sitting on the market longer than buyers expect. Here's the most dangerous part about Houston real estate. Many buyers get fooled by the job market and economic activity, thinking these factors guarantee property appreciation. But high crime rates, urban decay, and infrastructure problems are destroying neighborhoods faster than economic growth can improve them. Property insurance costs in Houston are among the highest in Texas due to crime, flooding, and hurricane risks. When you factor in higher taxes, increased security costs, and property damage from crime, the true cost of Houston homeownership becomes astronomical. The sheer size of Houston means that even good neighborhoods can become dangerous quickly as crime spreads and economic conditions change. Unlike smaller cities where problems are contained, Houston's urban problems can affect property values across massive areas. Traffic congestion in Houston is among the worst in the nation, which affects quality of life and property desirability. Long commutes, air pollution, and transportation costs all reduce the actual value of Houston property compared to other markets. Hurricane and flooding risks in Houston create ongoing threats to property values and insurance availability. Climate change is making these risks worse, and many areas of Houston are becoming uninsurable or prohibitively expensive to insure. Conclusion. We have just revealed the 10 worst cities to buy a house in Texas in 2025, from the suburban disaster of Balch Springs to the deceptive giant of Houston. Each of these cities represents different types of risks that can destroy your real estate investment and leave you trapped in a property you cannot sell. The common thread connecting all these dangerous markets is the combination of economic decline, safety concerns, and lack of growth catalysts that make property appreciation unlikely or impossible. Whether it is Raymondville's extreme poverty, Robstown's devastating crime rates, or Pecos's projected crash, these cities show what happens when fundamental problems are ignored by hopeful buyers. Remember that in real estate, location is everything, and these 10 cities represent locations where your money is not safe. The Texas housing market correction of 2025 is hitting some areas much harder than others, and these 10 cities are getting the worst of it. If you're thinking about buying real estate in Texas, focus on cities with strong economies, good schools, low crime rates, and diverse employment opportunities. Avoid the false bargains and deceptive pricing that make these dangerous markets seem attractive. Your home purchase should be an investment in your future, not a financial disaster that follows you for decades. Choose wisely, do your research, and remember that cheap prices usually mean expensive problems. What do you think about these dangerous Texas markets? Have you had experience with any of these cities? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more real estate insights that could save you from making costly mistakes. Do not let your dream of Texas home ownership turn into a financial nightmare.